Hey guys, Jared here, and today we have another Saturday special for you. And it's a topic I've wanted to talk about for a while, and it's actually a topic that I have spoken a little bit about in the past, and that is role-playing games on the Saturn and sort of what was happening back in 1995 to around late 97 into 98. As you all know, it's kind of like really popular with Sega Saturn fans that when Bernie Stoller basically became the president, whatever it was, of Sega of America, he did away with a lot of different things that had been done earlier by Kalinske, which was the old president, I think it was president, yeah, because CEO would be in Japan, of Sega of America. But to be fair, even with, I think it was Tom or Ted, never remember his name, Tom Kalinske, I think it was Tom. RPGs really weren't a popular thing, okay? I don't think this is any big secret or surprise or anything like that. They just weren't a popular genre in North America. If you don't know any history about role-playing games in North America, I can just sum it up like this. Square Enix has a lot of the success that they've had today. They owe a lot of that to the fact that they didn't leave North America, that they pressed on, that they kept releasing Final Fantasy games, Secret of Mana games, those sorts of games, all throughout the Super Nintendo's lifetime. And why I say that is because I don't think people realize just how important it was that they kept releasing their titles. You see, a great example to look at and see where things sort of fell apart was Dragon Quest. In Dragon Quest, no one knows what Dragon Quest really is. Very few people do. Dragon Warrior being the other, obviously the same series, just a different name. But Dragon Warrior, which is Dragon Quest, was released in North America on the NES. All four of them were released in North America. And, you know, yay, awesome. But just when games started to get, I don't want to say more mainstream. I mean, they were very mainstream with the NES, but it's just, I found that more people were taking notice during the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis lifetime, or cycle, or generation, or whatever you want to call it. And Enix pulled out. Like, they just totally left. Enix USA, they closed shop and they said, okay, we're done. And by doing that, they basically gave the RPG market to Square. Like, there was no one else, right? I mean, yes, Atlas was releasing a few titles here and there and things like that, but for the most part, Square was the only other company that really had this flagship series and that was pushing it. And their sales weren't great. As much as we like to talk about the North American Final Fantasy 2 and 3 being great games, of which they were, they didn't sell hundreds of millions of copies and, like, you know, people going crazy and all this sort of stuff. So that's basically the market, right? That's where you're coming in. And so it wasn't really too much as a surprise to find out that, you know, Sega was also of the belief that these games really wouldn't sell. There wasn't really an audience for those type of games. And I mean, I disagree with that. I do believe that these games would sell. They just wouldn't sell potentially, you know, the same as, say, like Super Mario Brothers, or, you know, the latest mascot platformers of the time, sports titles, things like that. But if you had realistic expectations, I really do think that they could have done more than what they did back then. But whatever. Everything changed with this game right here. And I've talked about this quite a lot over the years. This is Final Fantasy VII. When Final Fantasy VII came out, there was a paradigm shift in North America and even in Europe where suddenly RPGs were it. That's where North Americans were like, wow, baby, amazing, let's go and buy every RPG known to mankind. And on the PlayStation 1, I think everybody realized, like, wow, like, this was the highest selling Final Fantasy ever. And so Squaresoft, I'm pointing to wherever, I don't know. So Squaresoft basically just released everything they had. whatever was coming out in Japan, they were bringing over for the most part, and it was amazing. And they were releasing some really quality games, and it was unbelievable. They were getting sales off of everything. Yeah, sure, not everything was selling to this caliber or this scale, but everything was selling. If they had realistic sales expectations, they were pretty much matching or exceeding them all throughout the lifespan of the PlayStation 1, which really does show you that there was a paradigm shift, because the PlayStation 1 was also the system that had the most units out there, which means, you know, everybody was like, wow, RPGs, this is something cool, this is something new. In a lot of cases, a lot of people thought this was something new. Going back to Dragon Warrior or Dragon Quest, one of the biggest problems that they had was they didn't capitalize on that. That would have been a brilliant time to repackage Dragon Quest 1, 2, 3, 4, and then localize and bring over Dragon Quest 5 and 6, which were on the Super Famicom. And what I would have done is I would have actually gone back and taken the Super Famicom releases of 1, 2, 3, I would have redone 4, which is what they did on the PS1, and then had 5, 6, and released that as a collection to get it out there. That was the time where, you know, they could have capitalized on that series, and that's why unfortunately today it's not as popular as it could be, because there was just this huge lull. And when Dragon Warrior 7 finally hit, it was like 2001, I want to say. It was right around the time when the PlayStation 2 was coming out, or was already out. I know the Dreamcast was out already, which was totally ridiculous, and it was a old school RPG, and people were like, what the hell is this? So that's unfortunate, but I wanted to give you a little bit of sort of some context so you understand where we're coming from here, where I'm coming from here, in terms of the market. So the market really, in 1997, with the release of Final Fantasy VII, there was this paradigm shift, and all of a sudden RPGs were glorious, okay? Everybody wanted RPGs, they were selling all over the place. Even obscure RPGs were doing rather well. So this brings us to the Saturn. Keeping in mind that by 1997, when Bernie Stoller came out at E3 and basically said, well, the Saturn's not our future, that pretty much put the nail in the coffin for the Saturn, which means you had 95, you had 96, and you didn't have all of 95, you had a segment of 1995, you had all of 1996, and more or less half of 1997. That is not much time. So you're looking at maybe 2 years to 2.5 years, if you really want to be generous, of a lifespan for the Saturn. RPGs are a major undertaking. They take a long time, especially if you want 3D ones and things like that. So what I want to talk about today was just a couple, because I know there are a lot of fans out there that do like role-playing games, and I've been getting a lot of messages and stuff about which games would I recommend and how to go about doing this. So as always, I look at the North American releases. For imports, I always tackle those as separate entities. You've seen on the channel I've done quite a few different import reviews over the years, but when it comes to RPGs, it's, let's be honest, if they're not in English, North Americans are going to have an extraordinarily hard time playing them. It's just as simple as that. Now on the Saturn, there were some amazing role-playing games that were released exclusively in Japan, and unfortunately were never brought over here. I grabbed 6 that I could think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there are more that have been released here in North America, and the reason why I wanted to do this particular video is because 2 of these 6 you're actually going to see over the next 2 weeks. I've actually wrapped up what I believe are all the RPGs, but I really could be wrong. I have to go through, I still have like, gosh, I think like over 100 games that I still have to review here. So let's just begin, okay? What I'll do is I'll just tackle them, what are they? Yeah, they're actually in alphabetical order, believe it or not. Alright, so, and I'm not going to go into detail. I have reviews, like I said, of all of these. So there's Albert Odyssey, Legend of Eldine. And this, just by, and I have to do this often, this is a full-fledged RPG, this one. This one is, yeah, with a turn-based, yeah, okay. So this is your standard, you know, classic JRPG, turn-based. You have up to 5 party members in this one. And this was a really good game brought over by Working Designs. Now, with every single one of these games that I'm going to mention, there are problems with them. And I'm not going to go and re-review them. I'm just going to talk a little bit about why these are some issues. So, whereas today, okay, if you want to play this particular game, you can go ahead and pick it up on anything just about, right? It's available on PC, it's available on PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, hell, I think it's even available on the Vita as a PlayStation 1 Classic. You can pick it up on multiple platforms. Unfortunately, with the Sega Saturn releases, you really can't pick these up anywhere that I know of. That might not be entirely true. They might be available elsewhere, but not that I know of. So, right away, problem with this one is it's a Working Designs game, which means right away you're looking at $100 probably and more. These are not cheap games. Another problem, because RPGs were so sought after at this particular point in time, they're still sought after today. Supply and demand here. There is no supply, but a lot of demand. So prices for all of the games I'm going to talk about are very high, or are pretty high. So this was a really good RPG. I have the review already out for this one. I mean, I only show the introductions and stuff like that for role-playing games, just to give you a little bit of an idea of how the gameplay works and things like that. But this was a really, really good one. One of the best RPGs actually on the system as a full-fledged RPG. See, there are a lot of action RPGs and things like that on there, but that's a full-fledged RPG. Another one to see if you can get your hands on is Blazing Heroes. Now this one was the, I think it's Mystaria something or other, I can't remember. It was released under two names, this one. And this one is more of a strategy RPG. So this plays much more akin to Shining Force than your standard RPG, meaning this is much more something like you'd find from Fire Emblem, a game like that. And this was a good one. This was a very good game. And this, good news, this is actually still relatively cheap. So if you just type in Mystaria Saturn or Blazing Heroes, you'll find the exact same name. It was something to do with the copyright of the name or something. I forget the details of it. But that one you can still purchase relatively affordable, relatively. I don't recall, and the problem is the more videos that we do over the years, the more demand that we're making for these games, which, like I said, there is no more supply. So unfortunately, the games are getting harder and harder and harder and harder to find. So unfortunately for you guys, that was the cheapest one of all the ones I'm going to mention. And I say unfortunately, but there really weren't that many games released on the Saturn, at least in North America, for RPGs, because of what I said. Bernie Stoller basically was not a fan of role-playing games, and he was adamant that they would not sell. Now unfortunately for Working Designs, this created a lot of bad blood, because Working Designs wanted to bring over role-playing games, and it didn't mesh well, let's put it that way. Okay, another one is Dragon Force. This is another Working Designs game. Unfortunately, again, very expensive. Make sure you purchase a memory card for your Saturn, the little cart thing, or what's called the 4-in-1 cart, because this bad boy takes up 284 blocks to save. This is an incredible strategy RPG. A lot of people swear by this game as one of the best games on the Saturn, but again, unfortunately, because of that, this is an extremely expensive game. This is going to set you back quite a lot. What I love with this game is basically the amount of characters that are on, or sprites that are on screen at any given time when you're actually fighting in giant, massive battles. It's extremely, extremely impressive. So we're almost done, right? We're like half done, which is really sad. There's also Shining Force 3. There's a fan translation project. I talked about that before. I have all of them all translated and good to go. I never did get around to doing, I want to do a special feature on just this, where I look at all 3 parts, plus a premium disc. But this was the one that was released only in North America. And yet again, this is not cheap. This is going to set you back quite a bit. because this is one of the best games that was released on the platform, and unfortunately also one of the last games released on the platform. And you know, you tie those things together, and it's not cheap. But this one, much like what was it called? Blazing Heroes, was it? Yeah, Blazing Heroes, or I forget what the hell it is, that Mystaria one. It's something of Mystaria, like Realm of Mystaria, Shadow of Mystaria. I don't remember. Anyway. It's a strategy or tactical role-playing game. So you move sort of like, it's not really grid, well yeah, it's like grid-based where your characters move around, you attack with, it's classic Fire Emblem, put it that way. So if you like that, there you go. But you realize so far there's only been one traditional role-playing game, right? It's crazy. Next week we're going to look at Magic Knight Ray Earth, but this is an action RPG. So, excuse me, this plays much more like The Legend of Zelda than Final Fantasy, for example, or Suikoden, or any of those. Now, this one, I'll warn you right now, is one of the most expensive games on the Saturn because it is the last game that was released on the North American Saturn. It's from Working Designs, and it's an incredible, it's an incredibly fun game. So it's in very high demand. Unfortunately, like I say, this was released in ridiculously limited quantities. Not only that, but Working Designs took a major loss on this. This was actually one of the original titles that was announced when the Sega Saturn itself was originally announced at the Tokyo Game Show way back in 94, 95, whenever it was. And unfortunately, it just took so many years to come out in North America. So some aspects of this are quite dated, but it's still a very, very solid action RPG. What's cool about it is that you control 3 characters simultaneously, and you just, well, simultaneously control one of the 3, and you can swap back and forth between the other party members. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses and things like that. So next week on Saturnday, you guys can look forward to a review of Magic Knight Ray Earth. And then the week after that, we're going to review, and it's the last game I'm going to just show you guys today, which is Shining the Holy Ark. This is one of my favorite games of all time, and I just thought I'm missing one other RPG, which I'll pause the video and go get in just a sec. But yeah, this is one of my favorite games on the Saturn. In fact, it is my favorite game on the Saturn, and this is a full-fledged dungeon crawling RPG. I say dungeon crawling, well, there are some very long dungeons in this. What's really unique with this is that it's a follow-up to Shining in the Darkness, and it is a first-person RPG, which is really unique for that particular point in time, and it's unbelievably smooth, just a phenomenal game. I'll talk all about this one in 2 weeks' time, but again, it's up there. In terms of price, it's really, really up there because of the fact that it's a role-playing game, that it's a really, really good role-playing game. So when we're looking at, you know, straight up RPGs, in essence, I'm just looking through here, we basically have 2. We have Albert Odyssey, and we have Shining the Holy Ark. The other ones, like Dragon Force, like Shining Force 3 and Blazing Heroes, are more tactical or strategy RPGs. But there is one more, and I don't know how I forgot that. So I'm going to pause the video and go get it. Yeah, and I don't know exactly how I forgot this bad boy. But that's the thing, and I'm sure some of you are going to mention other games, but do keep in mind, please, that we're strictly talking about North American Sega Saturn here. I'm not talking about Japan, where I know they had Grandia and other titles, and Europe too. I'm not actually sure which ones were released in Europe. So if you do want to comment on this and say, oh, you forgot to mention this, that, just do keep in mind we're talking North America. But I'm sure there's some I'm forgetting. So the last big RPG to be released on the Saturn, in North America anyway, is the Holy Grail of the Sega Saturn, and it's one of gaming's most, you know, sought after titles, and that of course is, and I don't know how I forgot this, Panzer Dragoon Saga. This is it. This is a full-fledged giant RPG. Plays quite uniquely though. It's not your classic RPG. I have a review of it. I think I have a 15-minute review of it. Unfortunately, it was with my old capture technology. So I've been asked many times if I could redo this review today with the new technology that that we have available now, and I think one day I'll get to it. This is a phenomenal RPG. The only reason why I say that Shining the Holy Ark is my preferred game is because I really love the art style in this, and this was done by Camelot, the guys that did Golden Sun series, if you know what that is. I don't know what it is. There's something about this that I really love. Now that's not to say that this is a bad game, not at all. This is a 4-disc epic. Although you'd be surprised how fast you can actually beat this game, but it's really unique, and for its time, 1998, what it was trying to do was really special. Let's put it that way. It was really special, and it's sad that these 7 games that I just talked about, really had little fanfare whatsoever. They got little media coverage, and I don't blame them because the Saturn was pretty much dead on arrival. That's not true, but it was pretty much dead when that E3 happened and burning basically destroyed the platform. So because of that, Sony would get all of the hype and the attention and the press and everything about all their excellent RPGs. And I mean, there's no comparison. You can't compare the games that were released here to all the wealth of RPGs that were released on the PlayStation 1. But what I will say is that these were unique games, and they're well worth playing. Panzer Dragoon Saga, I'm sure you've heard a million times from people talking about that. Shining the Holy Ark is one that, in my opinion, you need to play. Even at $100, it's worth it to pick it up. And Albert Odyssey is a unique game. It's a fun little RPG. It's not as great or epic or grandiose as some of the ones you'll find on the PlayStation 1, but it's still a damn good game. And these other ones here that I mentioned, Blazing Heroes, Dragon Force, Shining Force 3, and Magic Knight Ray Earth, are all excellent strategy RPGs or action RPGs, and they're certainly worth looking. So I'd highly recommend you guys, if you're interested in any of these games, to go through the Saturn playlist and take a look at all the different reviews. We have reviews for every single one of these games with the exception of Shining the Holy Ark and Magic Knight Ray Earth, but both of those I'm going to be reviewing. Magic Knight Ray Earth next week, and then the following week I'll be taking a look at Shining the Holy Ark. And unfortunately after that it's pretty much going to be downhill because of all the other games that are going to release. There's good games for sure, but personally for me this is my favorite Saturn game. So anyways guys, let me know if I forgot any RPGs. I'm sure I forgot some. But I'm more interested in hearing your stories from around this time period, from 95 to 97, somewhere in there. Were you one of the ones, when Final Fantasy VII hit, that was your first RPG and, that welcomed you into the role-playing game genre, and then from there you started purchasing other ones? For me, I was a fan ever since Dragon Warrior on the NES, so I don't really have too much to add to that, but I'd be curious to hear from you guys what you thought, or maybe there'll be one or two of you that you'll say, no, actually my first introduction to role-playing games was Shining the Holy Ark or Albert Odyssey or Panzer Dragoon Saga or what have you. So leave a comment and maybe we can get a good discussion going on some classic RPGs from yesteryear. Alright guys, I guess that's about it. So next week we're back with a review of Magic Knight Ray Earth. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.